The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before William as he walked with measured steps, his heart pounding against his ribs. The sterile white walls seemed to close in around him, and the familiar scent of disinfectant brought back memories he had tried to bury. His hands trembled slightly as he approached room 237, where Kate had been for the past 3 weeks. The doctors had been honest with him from the beginning. The cancer had spread faster than anyone had anticipated, and despite all the treatments, all the hope, all the prayers from millions around the world, time was running short. William paused outside her door, gathering the strength he needed to be the pillar Kate deserved in these final moments. Through the small window, he could see her lying peacefully, her once vibrant auburn hair now thin and delicate against the pristine white pillow. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the hospital blinds, casting gentle shadows across her pale face. Even in illness, she retained that grace that had captivated him since their university days at St. Andrews. Kate's eyes fluttered open as if sensing his presence. A soft smile crossed her lips when she saw him standing there. This smile, though weakened by months of treatment, still held the same warmth that had made him fall in love with her all those years ago. She raised her hand slightly, and he immediately moved to her bedside, taking her delicate fingers in his strong ones. The weight of their situation settled heavily in the room. Outside, the world continued its relentless pace. Reporters had gathered in small groups near the hospital entrance, respectfully maintaining their distance while the nation held its collective breath. Social media buzzed with messages of support, prayers, and love for the couple who had become symbols of hope and resilience. William pulled the chair closer to her bed, never releasing her hand. They had been through so much together: the joy of their wedding day, the birth of their 3 children, countless royal duties, public appearances, and private moments that belonged only to them. Now, as they faced their greatest challenge, words seemed inadequate to express the depth of their connection. Kate's breathing was shallow but steady. She looked into his eyes, those familiar blue eyes that had been her anchor through every storm. In that gaze, she found the same man who had nervously proposed to her in Kenya, who had stood waiting for her at Westminster Abbey, who had held each of their newborn children with tears of joy streaming down his face. The medical equipment around them hummed quietly, marking time with electronic precision. Nurses moved past the door occasionally, their footsteps muffled on the polished floor. But inside room 237, time seemed suspended, allowing William and Kate to exist in a bubble where only their love mattered. She squeezed his hand gently, a gesture that spoke volumes. In that simple touch, she conveyed her gratitude for their life together, her love for their children, and her acceptance of what was to come. William understood every nuance of that squeeze, having learned to read her silent language over their years together. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it softly, his eyes never leaving her face. The diamond engagement ring that once belonged to his mother caught the light, a symbol of eternal love that would soon carry even deeper meaning. Kate watched him, memorizing every detail of his expression, storing these precious moments in her heart. The room filled with an invisible energy, a connection that transcended the physical world. They were communicating on a level that went beyond words, sharing thoughts and emotions through glances, touches, and the simple act of being present with each other. The outside world with its protocols, expectations, and demands faded away, leaving only a husband and wife in their most vulnerable and authentic moment. As the afternoon wore on, they remained connected in this silent dialogue, both understanding that they were creating a memory that would have to last William a lifetime. Kate's eyes began to grow heavy, but she fought to stay awake, unwilling to miss a single moment of their time together. William gently stroked her hair, whispering softly that it was okay to rest, that he would be right there when she woke up. The love that had sustained them through 15 years of marriage now took on a different quality. Deeper, more profound, touched by the bitter sweetness of impending separation. In that quiet hospital room, surrounded by machines and medical charts, they found a peace that would soon become the foundation for everything that followed. The next morning arrived with a gentle rainfall that seemed to match the somber mood within the hospital walls. William had spent the night in the uncomfortable chair beside Kate's bed, refusing the offers from staff to provide more suitable sleeping arrangements. He wanted to be there if she woke, to ensure she never felt alone during what might be their final hours together. Kate stirred as the first light of dawn crept through the window. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim morning light. William was instantly alert, leaning forward to be closer to her. She turned her head toward him, and despite the obvious effort it required, she managed another of those precious smiles that had become even more valuable than gold to him. Dr. Matthews entered quietly, his expression carefully neutral as he performed his morning examination. William stepped back respectfully but remained close enough to maintain eye contact with Kate. The doctor's findings confirmed what they all already knew. There was little time left. When Dr. Matthews spoke quietly to William near the window, Kate couldn't hear the words, but she understood from their body language that the final chapter of their story was beginning. After the doctor left, William returned to Kate's side. She reached for his hand again, and this time her grip was weaker than the day before. They both felt the significance of this change, but neither acknowledged it aloud. Instead, they focused on the warmth that still passed between them, the connection that illness could not diminish. The morning passed quietly with minimal interruption. Nurses checked on Kate regularly, but they worked efficiently and respectfully, understanding the precious nature of these private moments. William found himself studying every detail of Kate's face, wanting to preserve each expression, each fleeting smile, each peaceful moment when pain seemed to recede. Around midday, Kate's sister Pippa arrived with their children. George, Charlotte, and Louis had been staying with their aunt, shielded from the worst of their mother's condition, but aware that something serious was happening. Their young faces showed a mixture of confusion and concern as they quietly entered the hospital room. William helped each child climb carefully onto the bed beside their mother. Kate's eyes lit up with a brightness that had been absent for days when she saw them. This was the gift she had been hoping for. One more opportunity to hold her babies, to look into their eyes and imprint their faces in her memory. George, now 11 and the most aware of the situation's gravity, sat close to his mother's shoulder. Charlotte, 9 and still believing in the magic of recovery, chattered softly about her drawing class and the picture she had made for Mummy. 4-year-old Louis simply cuddled against Kate's side, content to be near her warmth. The family spent 2 hours together, creating what William knew would become precious memories for their children. Kate listened to every word they said, asked about their activities, and praised Charlotte's artwork with genuine enthusiasm. She helped Louis with a puzzle he had brought and listened intently as George told her about his football match. When it was time for the children to leave, Kate held each one a little longer than usual. She whispered something private to each of them, words that would remain between mother and child forever. Louis didn't want to go, sensing something final in his mother's embrace, but Pippa gently coaxed him away with promises of ice cream and a visit to the park. As the children left, Kate's strength seemed to leave with them. The effort of being strong for them had depleted her reserves, but the joy on her face made it clear she regretted nothing. William could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but also the satisfaction of a mother who had given her children one last gift of normalcy and love. The afternoon brought a different quality of light into the room. The rain had stopped, and patches of blue sky appeared between the clouds. Kate and William settled back into their private world, where conversation happened through glances and touch rather than words. She was growing weaker, and they both knew that their time was becoming more precious with each passing hour. Kate closed her eyes and seemed to drift into a light sleep, but her hand remained firmly clasped in William's. He sat motionless, afraid that any movement might disturb this peaceful moment. The silence in the room was profound, broken only by the gentle sounds of Kate's breathing and the distant murmur of hospital activity. As evening approached, Kate opened her eyes again and looked directly at William. In that gaze, he saw everything they had shared and everything they would miss. She was preparing to say goodbye, and he knew that tomorrow would bring the moment they had both been dreading and, in a strange way, preparing for together. The third day dawned with unusual clarity, as if the world itself was preparing for something significant. William had maintained his vigil throughout another sleepless night, watching over Kate as she drifted in and out of peaceful rest. Her breathing had become more labored, but she seemed comfortable, wrapped in the soft blankets that the nursing staff had provided. When Kate woke that morning, there was something different in her eyes, a sense of resolution, perhaps even peace. She looked at William with an intensity that made his heart skip, as if she was trying to memorize every line of his face, every shade of blue in his eyes. He understood that look. It was the same way she had looked at him on their wedding day, drinking in every detail of a moment she never wanted to forget. Dr. Matthews made his rounds earlier than usual, speaking quietly with William about making Kate as comfortable as possible. The medical team had done everything they could, and now their role was simply to ensure she felt no pain as nature took its course. William nodded his understanding, though every fiber of his being rebelled against accepting this reality. After the medical staff left, William moved his chair even closer to Kate's bed. She turned onto her side to face him better, despite the obvious effort this required. Her hand found his across the small space between them, and they interlocked fingers like teenagers in love. This simple gesture carried the weight of their entire relationship, from those early days of secret romance at university to this final chapter. Kate's voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper, but every word was clear and deliberate. She told William how proud she was of the man he had become, how honored she felt to have shared this extraordinary life with him. She spoke of their children with fierce love, asking him to help them remember that love was the most important thing she could leave them. William found his own voice catching as he responded. He told her about the first time he realized he loved her, not the moment he thought he loved her, but the moment he knew with absolute certainty that she was his forever. It was during their second year at St. Andrews, when she had gotten food poisoning and spent 3 days miserable in her dorm room. He had brought her soup and sat with her, reading aloud from their assigned texts and watching her sleep. That was when he knew. They talked about their wedding day, remembering small details that no one else would know. The way Kate's hand shook slightly as they exchanged rings, how William almost forgot his lines during the ceremony because he was so overwhelmed by her beauty. The quiet moment they shared in the carriage after the ceremony, when they finally had a second to breathe and look at each other as husband and wife. The memories flowed between them like a gentle current. Their honeymoon in the Seychelles, where they could finally be just William and Kate without the weight of royal protocol. The morning Kate told him she was pregnant with George, how they both cried with joy and terror in equal measure. Charlotte's first steps, taken between her parents in the garden at Kensington Palace. Louis's birth and how Kate had looked exhausted but radiant, holding their newest addition while George and Charlotte peered curiously at their baby brother. As the day progressed, Kate's energy came in waves. Sometimes she was alert and engaged, sharing observations about their life together with surprising clarity. Other times she would close her eyes and rest, but always keeping hold of William's hand, as if that connection was the anchor keeping her grounded in their shared love. The afternoon brought visitors who had requested permission to say goodbye. Kate's parents, Carol and Michael, arrived with red eyes but determined smiles. They spent time holding their daughter, whispering private words of love and pride. Kate's brother James came too, bringing with him a photo album filled with pictures from their childhood that made Kate smile despite her exhaustion. Prince Charles arrived in the early evening, his usual formal demeanor replaced by the tenderness of a father watching his son navigate the most difficult moment of his life. He spent a few minutes alone with Kate, and whatever passed between them brought a look of profound peace to her face. When he hugged William goodbye, it was with the fierce protectiveness of a father who wished he could take away his child's pain. As night fell, the hospital seemed to grow quieter, as if the entire building was holding its breath. Kate and William were alone again, facing what they both sensed would be their final night together. The room was lit only by the soft glow of the bedside lamp and the gentle illumination from the medical equipment. Kate struggled to stay awake, fighting against the increasing fatigue that was claiming more of her energy. William encouraged her to rest, promising that he would be right there, that she was safe to let go if she needed to. But Kate shook her head slightly, not ready yet to surrender these last precious hours. They lay together in the narrow hospital bed, William having carefully positioned himself beside her, so they could be close without causing her discomfort. Kate rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, a sound that had comforted her for 15 years and would comfort her now in these final hours. In the darkness, they continued their wordless conversation, speaking through touch, through shared breath, through the simple miracle of presence. The outside world had faded completely away, leaving only this moment, this love, this goodbye that neither wanted to say but both knew was coming. Dawn broke gently on what would be their final day together, though neither William nor Kate spoke this truth aloud. The morning light seemed softer somehow, filtered through a thin layer of clouds that gave everything an ethereal quality. Kate had slept fitfully through the night, but when she woke, there was a serenity in her expression that hadn't been there before. William had dozed sporadically, one hand always maintaining contact with Kate, afraid that if he let go completely, she might slip away while he wasn't watching. Now in the pale morning light he could see how much weaker she had become overnight. Her skin was almost translucent and her breathing required more conscious effort than before. The nursing staff moved through their morning routines with extra gentleness, speaking in hushed tones and working efficiently to minimize disruption. Dr. Matthews made his visit brief, checking Kate's vital signs and adjusting her medication to ensure she remained comfortable. His eyes met William's with a look of compassionate understanding. No words were necessary to communicate that this was likely their last day. Kate seemed to understand this too. After the medical team left, she asked William to help her sit up higher in the bed. It took considerable effort, but she wanted to be able to look at him properly, to see his face clearly for whatever time they had left. Once positioned comfortably, she reached for his hands and held them between her own. For the first time in days, Kate began to speak about practical matters. She wanted William to know how proud she was of the father he had become, and how confident she felt about his ability to guide their children through the difficult times ahead. She made him promise to help George understand that becoming king one day was not a burden, but an opportunity to serve others with love and dignity. She spoke about Charlotte, her fierce and independent daughter who reminded Kate so much of herself at that age. She wanted Charlotte to know that women could be both strong and gentle, that leadership came in many forms, and that her mother's greatest pride was in the kind, empathetic person she was becoming. For Louis, their baby who would grow up with only fragments of memories of his mother, Kate had special requests. She wanted William to tell him stories about her, to share photos and videos, to help him understand that he had been deeply loved from the moment he was born. She made William promise that Louis would never feel the absence of her love, even if he couldn't remember her presence. As Kate shared these thoughts, William listened with complete attention, memorizing every word, every inflection of her voice. These weren't just requests. They were sacred trusts that he would carry for the rest of his life. He promised her everything she asked, his voice strong despite the tears that threatened to overwhelm him. The morning passed slowly, marked by quiet conversations and long stretches of comfortable silence. Kate's energy was limited, but she used it deliberately, choosing her words carefully and making each moment count. She told William about her gratitude for their life together, for the privilege of loving him and being loved by him in return. Around midday, Kate asked William to read to her from a book of poetry they had discovered together during their honeymoon. He retrieved the worn volume from her bedside table, finding it bookmarked at a poem about eternal love that had become special to them over the years. His voice wavered slightly as he read the familiar verses, but Kate's peaceful expression encouraged him to continue. When he finished reading, Kate smiled and whispered that she would carry those words with her wherever she was going. The simple statement hung in the air between them, the closest either had come to acknowledging the reality of separation. William leaned forward and kissed her forehead gently, his lips lingering against her warm skin. The afternoon brought a different quality of light and energy. Kate seemed to be conserving her strength for something, though neither of them spoke about what that might be. They continued to hold hands, sometimes talking softly, other times simply existing together in the bubble of love they had created around themselves. As evening approached, Kate asked William to lie beside her again. He carefully positioned himself on the narrow hospital bed, wrapping his arms around her with infinite tenderness. She nestled against him, her breathing synchronized with his as if they were becoming one person in these final hours. Kate began to speak about their future, but not in terms of separation. She talked about how love didn't end with death, how the connection they had built would continue to exist in a different form. She told William that she would find ways to let him know she was still with him, still loving him, still proud of the man he was and would continue to become. She spoke about watching over their children, about being present for their important moments even if they couldn't see her. Her voice grew softer as she shared these thoughts, but her conviction remained strong. She wasn't leaving them. She was simply changing the way she would love them. William held her closer as darkness fell outside their window. The hospital grew quiet around them, as if the entire world was giving them space for this most intimate goodbye. In the gentle glow of the bedside light, they looked into each other's eyes and saw the culmination of 15 years of shared love, shared dreams, and shared life. The moment they had both been dreading and, in some strange way, preparing for was finally approaching. But instead of fear, they found themselves surrounded by an almost palpable sense of completion, of a love story that was ending one chapter but would continue in ways they were only beginning to understand. The evening hours passed like a sacred ritual, each moment precious and unrepeatable. William and Kate lay together in the hospital bed, her body fitting perfectly against his as it had for so many years. The medical monitors provided a gentle background rhythm, but their focus was entirely on each other, on the connection that transcended the physical world closing in around them. Kate's breathing had become more shallow, requiring greater effort, but her eyes remained bright and focused when she looked at William. There was something almost luminous about her expression, as if she was beginning to see beyond the confines of the hospital room to something beautiful and peaceful that awaited her. Around 9 o'clock, Kate asked William to tell her about their first dance as a married couple. She wanted to remember the feeling of being in his arms while the world watched, but feeling like they were completely alone. William's voice was soft and melodic as he described that perfect moment. How nervous he had been, how beautiful she looked in her wedding dress, how the music seemed to play just for them as he spoke. Kate closed her eyes and smiled, almost as if she could hear the music again. She whispered that dancing with him had always felt like flying, like being lifted above all the challenges and responsibilities that came with their public life. In his arms, she had always been just Kate, just a woman deeply in love with her husband. The night nurse checked on them periodically, but from a respectful distance, understanding that these were the most private and precious hours a couple could share. The hospital chaplain stopped by briefly, offering support and prayers, but Kate and William declined visitors, needing these final hours to belong only to them. As midnight approached, Kate's strength began to ebb more noticeably. Her words came more slowly, separated by longer pauses, but each one was chosen with care. She told William that she wasn't afraid of what was coming, that her only sadness was in leaving him and the children. She made him promise again to help their children understand that love never dies, that it simply changes form. William found himself memorizing everything about this night, the way Kate's hand felt in his, the sound of her voice speaking his name, the way the lamplight played across her face. He wanted to capture every detail so that in the years to come, he could return to this moment and feel her presence again. Around 2 a.m, Kate began to speak about their early days together at university. She remembered their first kiss, how shy they had both been, how it felt like the most natural thing in the world and the most miraculous thing that had ever happened to her. She talked about falling asleep in his arms during movie nights, about studying together in the library, about dreaming of a future together without really believing it could be possible. She told him about the exact moment she knew she wanted to spend her life with him. It wasn't during any grand gesture or romantic scene, but on an ordinary Tuesday morning when she watched him making breakfast for his flatmates, humming off key and completely absorbed in the simple task. She had looked at him and thought, "This is the man I want to wake up next to for the rest of my life." William shared his own memories in return, his voice thick with emotion as he described watching her sleep that first morning they spent together, how he had been terrified that she would regret it when she woke up. Instead, she had opened her eyes, smiled at him, and asked if he wanted to get breakfast together. That smile had changed everything for him. They talked about their children's births, reliving each miraculous arrival. Kate remembered how William had cried when he first held George, how he had been so worried about being a good father that he researched everything about babies and child development. She laughed softly as she recalled how he had insisted on reading parenting books to her when she was pregnant, as if they were studying for the most important exam of their lives. As the hours passed, Kate's voice grew softer, but her thoughts became more profound. She spoke about gratitude, not just for the extraordinary life they had shared, but for every ordinary moment that had made up their love story. She was grateful for morning cups of tea, for bedtime stories with the children, for quiet walks in the garden, for arguments that made them stronger, for making up after those arguments. She told William that their love had been her greatest achievement, greater than any royal duty or public service. Being his wife had been the role she was most proud of, and watching him become the man and father he was had been her greatest joy. She wanted him to know that if she had to live their life again, she wouldn't change a single moment, not even the painful ones, because they had all led to this perfect, terrible, beautiful love. As dawn began to break outside their window, Kate's breathing became more labored, but she fought to stay conscious, to remain present for these final precious hours. William held her closer, whispering words of love and reassurance, telling her it was okay to rest, that their love would continue even when she couldn't hold on any longer. The approaching sunrise painted the hospital room in soft golden light, as if nature itself was preparing for this sacred transition. Kate looked into William's eyes one last time with full consciousness, and in that gaze she communicated everything that words could never express. She was ready, but she would carry their love with her wherever she was going. The final dawn broke with extraordinary beauty, as if the universe itself was honoring the love story that was reaching its conclusion. Golden light streamed through the hospital window, bathing William and Kate in a warm glow that seemed to come from something beyond the ordinary world. Kate's breathing had become very gentle, each breath a conscious choice to remain present for these last precious moments. William held her with infinite tenderness, his arms creating a protective circle around the woman who had been his everything for 15 years. Kate's eyes opened one last time, and in them he saw not fear or sadness, but pure love and complete peace. She looked at him as if she was trying to take his image with her, to carry the sight of his face into whatever came next. In that final gaze, they had their most profound conversation without speaking a single word. Kate's eyes told him that their love had been perfect, that he had been everything she could have asked for in a husband and partner. She conveyed her absolute faith in his ability to raise their children with love and wisdom, to help them grow into the remarkable people she knew they would become. William's eyes responded with his own silent promises. He would love her forever, would honor her memory by being the father she believed he could be. He would tell their children stories about their mother that would keep her spirit alive in their hearts. He would carry their love forward, not as a burden of grief, but as a source of strength and light. Kate's hand, which had grown weaker throughout the night, squeezed his with surprising strength one final time. In that pressure, she said goodbye to everything they had shared and hello to whatever lay beyond. It was a gesture of completion, of gratitude, of eternal love that would transcend physical separation. As the morning light grew stronger, Kate's breathing became even more peaceful, as if she was simply choosing to rest after the most beautiful and exhausting journey of her life. William whispered words of love, telling her it was okay to let go, that she had given them all everything they could have asked for and more. Dr. Matthews entered quietly, understanding immediately what was happening. He checked Kate's vital signs with professional gentleness, then stepped back respectfully, allowing William and Kate to have these final moments in private. The medical staff had become protective of this couple's privacy, understanding that they were witnessing something sacred. Kate's eyes fluttered closed, but a peaceful smile remained on her lips. William continued to hold her, speaking softly about their children, about their memories, about his eternal love for her. He told her about the first time he had seen her at university, how she had taken his breath away and changed his life forever. He promised her that their story wouldn't end here, that their love would continue in their children, in the lives they had touched, in the example they had set for the world. The morning sun reached its peak, filling the room with radiant light when Kate drew her final breath. It was so gentle, so peaceful that for a moment William wasn't sure it had happened. But then he felt the subtle change, the leaving of the spirit that had animated the body he still held. The woman he loved had gone ahead of him, but somehow her presence still filled the room. William remained holding her for a long time, speaking to her as if she could still hear him, and perhaps she could. He told her about his love, about his gratitude, about his promise to live in a way that would make her proud. The grief he felt was overwhelming, but it was matched by an equally powerful sense of completion, of having shared something so beautiful and profound that death could not diminish it. When Dr. Matthews finally approached, William kissed Kate's forehead one last time, whispering a final "I love you" before gently releasing her hand. The physical part of their journey together was complete, but something deeper and more enduring continued to exist in that hospital room and would accompany William for the rest of his life. Outside the hospital, the world began to learn of Kate's passing. Flowers appeared at the gates of Kensington Palace. Messages of condolence poured in from around the globe, and people who had never met the royal couple found themselves crying for a love story that had touched their hearts. But inside room 237, William sat quietly beside the woman who had made his life extraordinary, feeling not just the weight of loss but the incredible privilege of having loved and been loved so completely. The embrace they had shared in those final hours would live in his memory forever, not as an ending, but as a testament to a love that had transformed them both, and would continue to transform everyone it touched. Kate was gone, but their love story would endure, written not just in the pages of history, but in the hearts of their children and in the example they had set for what true, unconditional love could be. The world had watched them live, and now the world had witnessed them say goodbye with a grace and love that would be remembered long after the details of their public life had faded. In that last embrace, William and Kate had spoken without words, and their silent conversation had become a love letter to eternity itself.